Grid here tonight from Daytona Beach, Florida, and for the second time in 3 races, Simon Pilot, your race winner from Brands Hatch, will bring us to the green flag this evening. He is joined on the front row by Nick Sanchez. Lionel Pernia and Raja Caruth will double up for row number 2. They'll start in 3rd and 4th position with Frederick Gabillon and Paul Jouffreau, your top 6.
Jake Cosio will start in 7th, and Victor Barros Jr., very consistent in this series, will start in 8th position. 9th spot will go to David E. Dallara with Giorgio Maggi in the 10th position. Paul Jourdain, who had some exciting moments last week, starts in row 6 with Andreas Perez Dallara in the outside portion of that row.
And continuing on through, all these drivers qualifying in this session. Jaded Arena and Abraham Calderon on row number 7. Justin Campbell, Alex De Albo will double up for row number 8 with Ruben Garcia and Jocelyn Facto, your top 18 starters.
LeVar Scott will start towards the back of the grid with Isabella Robusto in 20th. And the only driver not to set a time was Regina Servian, who will start in 21st position. An exciting field and a big field of drivers ready to go, Evan.
And there's a lot of drivers who have shown a lot of speed. There are some drivers, though, looking to make up for it, and that's why I think the front row on the grid here this afternoon is so entertaining, Justin. Of the drivers who have started both races, Simon Pilot has the best average finish. He won at Brands Hatch, finished 5th at COTA. He's looking for a second win, and has got the best seat in the house. But how about Nick Sanchez? Finished in 16th position in that COTA race, but he has got a lot of speed in this one. Starting from the outside of the front row, has got a real good opportunity to get a race win for those drivers in the NASCAR Drive for Diversity program. Of course, Simon Pilot representing the drivers of the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series. It was Augusto Canapino who won last time out at COTA, representing the NASCAR Peak of Mexico Series drivers. Of course, drivers from the NASCAR Pinty Series involved as well. Do we see our first repeat winner, or could maybe Sanchez or somebody else steal this one from the 66?
It could go either way, Evan, because I've been keeping an eye on the practice charts all day. 4 drivers, including a majority of them up towards your front, have been very consistent. You could also put Paul Jouffreau into that grouping as well of consistent lap times. It's going to be fun in the mid-pack to see how our drivers fare out, though. It's going to be a mix of hard battling, I think, early on. That's going to make or break some of these race drivers early on.
Pace car going to be in this time, but this race set for 30 laps on the board. We're just about an hour on the stopwatch as we close out this inaugural eNASCAR International Series. Happy that you're with us at iRacing Live as we say, let's go racing at Daytona. Already looking 3 wide in the run to turn 1, and it is Nick Sanchez who goes to an early race lead.
Oh, in a bit of trouble already. That's not good.
And that is Raja Caruth who gets spun. It was Simon Pilot who got a slow start from pole, got hit from behind, and Raja was actually trying to make some moves. He gets cleaned out, and it's chaos in the opening lap. Now, through the infield portion, that's the International Horseshoe, the right-hander for turn number 3. They'll then work to a left-hand kink, turn 4, the dogleg, and then down to the West Horseshoe.
And I was about to say, when it comes to that run up towards the in and out portion of the track, wheel hop and drivers trying to manage their wheel movement and speed coming out of that corner is going to be so difficult as one more driver off the racetrack, because it's so easy to make mistakes in this section, to hit the gas too hard and loop it around, or to wheel hop and have your tires light up. It's not a fun time when you have trouble in that section of the racetrack, especially early on off the jump.
And that issue was with Jaded Rainey when NASCAR's Drive for Diversity drivers drops to the back of the field. So a couple of incidents early in this race. There's Jake Cosio, started from 7th position in this one, but has dropped down to position number 10 and under fire. Here comes Abraham Calderon, thinking about a dive bomb down and into the bus stop, won't commit to it. Right there is fine, Justin. That second out right there, you see those yellow curbs on the extra bit of paving. That's what NASCAR added to this Daytona Road course for these stock car races. Those sausage curbs, the turtle curbs, if you will. We talked about those at COTA. You'll be talking about them a lot again here tonight. They're very tricky down in this chicane, the NASCAR chicane for turns number 13 and 14. You do not want to get any tire on those yellow or blue curbs, unlike normal rumble strips.
And if you remember back to last year with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series in particular, drivers had the risk of getting engine damage in that section of the racetrack because of how tall those curves are. And once you damage the motor, causes some trouble. As speaking of trouble, I believe one driver around in front of the pack.
It was somebody up against the wall. It's the number 12 machine with issues. So early problems for Nick Sanchez, the race leader, on his own. Makes a mistake in the dive to turn number 1. How the turntables as the 12 car spins on his own, and now it'll hand the race lead off to the number 3 machine of Frederick Gavilon in the number 3. He takes over the spot. 3 different race leaders in the opening 2 laps of this race as we watch the battle rage on in the mid-pack here ahead of that number 14 machine and company. There's a lot going on here in the midfield.
I was expecting a lot of back and forth coming in. I wasn't expecting this type of back and forth so far, Evan, to say the very least. And you talked about the mistake with Sanchez. This is similar to what we've seen before, but with traffic on the first lap. Locked up the left front, bit of wheel hop, loops it on around, trying to keep it straight. Goes right up against the wall, actually gets hit by a couple cars trying to get it away from the wall. And that's how already the 12 machine is in 17th position.
He just got stuck on that wall and he couldn't really back it up without getting in the way. And you can look at this big mess of race cars. It's basically everybody from Paul Jouffreau, who rides now in 4th on back. You can see Giorgio Maggi in the mix, looking to pick up after an unfortunate result in his last race out, 12th position, looking to build upon that. Mid-pack continues with the likes of Andres Perez de Lara, Simon Pilot, Abraham Calderon, and somebody else is off towards the back. Couple of cars with issues. David de Lara ends up spun. He had a big problem coming into the chicane and made contact, I believe, with the 8 machine of Paul Jourdain. Jourdain was the yellow number 8 who you saw in the middle. Now more side by side into 1 as Simon Pilot's driving mad, Justin, trying to make up for those spots lost early in that turn 1, lap 1 incident.
You can see how dialed in and focused he is to try and make up for his mistakes here, but the problem's going to be the pressure coming from behind to try and make sure he pulls off and away, because it's so easy for drivers to end up getting to the back end of one error, especially when they're this close in this section of the racetrack. Where you're trying to make sure you keep that out of the back of your mind, and you're trying to make sure that you try and focus on the task at hand, and that is trying to catch up to the cars in front, close up the gap, gain some of the time positions lost, because Pilot was somebody when it comes to that Euro NASCAR Esports Series event who was very quick here. That was, mind you, with a different type of car, but that experience does matter here, Evan.
It does. I think any seat time is going to help. The fun thing that we talked about with all those international races for this international series is Justin Campbell has a bit of an off in the number 18 machine. Justin, it was that, we weren't shocked that it was the Wheel and Euro Series guys who dominated the opener 2 weeks ago, because that's an actual track that they race at. In fact, competed there just last weekend. So it was no shock that it was those drivers who dominated. When we came back stateside, thought maybe some of the other drivers, the Drive for Diversity drivers who we talked about, their program is mainly focused around short tracks in the United States, and not some of these larger road courses. Maybe some of those more well acquainted with the sim will have more time here as we pick up Victor Morales Jr. As he continues rounded around in the number 3 spot, up 5, one of your biggest movers on this race thus far, if that would change things. And I think it has. But in the end, after a chaotic start, your highest non-Peak Mexico Series or Wheel and Euro Series driver is Andres Perez de Lara, running in the number 7 spot. So those drivers towards the front have really locked in now. And to be honest, I thought that's what we were going to see out of Justin Campbell when he took over the race lead. Thought he was going to be able to get comfortable, lock in. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Long way to go. And what we've learned over both of these 2 weeks, Justin, is self-inflicted errors have always been a factor.
They're always something that can end up happening, especially in a road course, Evan. As we take a look at Jocelyn Vecto, for example, to follow along with here, it's a time where drivers have the tendency to make mistakes, especially early on with the colder tires, with you being more grouped together. But once you spread apart a little bit, that's where you're able to get yourself into a rhythm and try and really hit your marks and dial yourself forward to gain positions on the racetrack. This is a tough track, to be able to master. You can see the perfect example right here. If you carry too much speed in one section, you go off the racetrack. It's so simple for mistakes to end up happening of it.
It is very easy, and we talked about, I did off at the top, the lack of elevations on that infield portion of the road course. You're not going to have, any banking to work with or work against. You're not going to be going uphill, downhill. You're going to have to use the non-turtle curbs, the non-sausage curbs to try to get those things to rotate, but you end up in the grass, and it's very easy to find yourself in some trouble. But clearly just trying to ride and get comfortable in this race is Vecto there down the back straightaway, looking up to the battle for second position, which is not that far off of the race lead. The 75 of Lionel Pernia is in second, but right up the road, there is the number 3 of Gavilan. So he is getting chased down for the top position, Justin. Borales not that far back. Jouffro not that far back in fourth as well. But a battle for the race lead is on. The 3 is under fire.
And it's just a matter of where he tries to set this up, because it's so tricky to make a move here. Wouldn't be surprised to see a dive in the next couple laps, or you can have that with the rear tires stepping out.
And through the inside, new race leader to Lionel Pernia makes the pass on the infield portion through the International Horseshoe. And on lap number 5, we have our 4th different race leader already. Very different story, Justin, to what we saw in the opening 2 weeks of this eNASCAR International Series, where both Simon Pilot and Augustin Canapino won their respective races from pole. In this case, Pernia has been able to fight his way up to the race lead after starting originally in the number 3 spot. And as the race lead settles down for a moment, here's a dive. Giorgio Maggi under fire with Andres Perez de Lara in a battle for P6.
Both of these drivers have really improved for this race. You can definitely tell they are comfortable and are able to charge on forward, especially Perez de Lara, who struggled at the Circuit of the Americas, looks very dialed in on the marks right now to make sure that that 22 is able to keep on progressing forward. The tough part's going to be trying to break away from this group, because it seems like everybody is wanting to stay grouped together, or at the very least is magnetized towards each other right now, with how they're running pace-wise and how they were in practice and qualifying.
And that's going to be key as well, is keeping up speed and being consistent over the course of this entire thing. Let's ride on board with Giorgio Maggi, the Swiss driver behind the wheel of the number 14 machine, as he rides right now. I talked about those other finishes from him earlier. Oh, there's a spin, too much in the NASCAR chicane, and Maggi will spin it out. I wonder if he had a little bit of assistance, Justin. It looked like that 2-car, a Calderon, might have finished him off.
I think he definitely had some assistance with the fact that it almost became a sandwich there that turned up in that situation. But a great job to get himself quickly out of the racing line, him out of trouble to prevent further damage. The downside is all the track position Maggi had gained, gone.
Well, let's watch it again. It was into that last part of the racetrack, that NASCAR chicane. The 22 checks up just a little bit. I wonder if that's what slows 14 down. But right there, 22 gets curb, 14 lifts, and then it is that 2 of Abraham Calderon who gets more of that exit turtle curb and just drives straight through the 14 of Maggi, Justin. His finishes earlier in this series, 11th and 12th, and was doing a great job inside of the top 10 until that contact. Now, the battle for second rages on as the 3-car continues to slide down, and it is now Frederic Gavilan driving backwards, and Victor Borales now up into the number 2 spot. That's a race high for the number 39 Ford.
And you talked about the consistency with Simon Pilot earlier on. Don't forget Victor Borales Jr., the other driver in this series who has scored a top 5 in each of the races. Very clean, very consistent when it comes to his driving, and has been known for being a thrilling competitor. Had a great second half of the race at the Circuit of the Americas. And Victor Borales Jr. showing that speed once more as the 3 machine continues to try and keep up at the very least. The tough part is the tires seem to be going away on that car.
And it is getting difficult as he tries to keep with the 39. But I think Morales is going to win out in this exchange. And now we look back to Calderon. This is the battle of the rest. After Magi got cleaned out of this exchange, Calderon now under fire in the number 7 position. That is Jake Cozio trying to fight back. Calderon made a move for 7th last lap. We'll see what the Haviland-sponsored Toyota Supra can do. And even further on down the road, Raja Karuth, Justin, was 4th on the grid as he makes a pass on Ruben Garcia for the number 10 spot. A little bit of lockup. No harm, no foul, and he will move his way back and into a top 10 position. He was the driver who was making the play for the race lead. Turn 1, lap 1 of this race, and then was punted after that contact with your pole sitter, Simon Pilot. Pilot got hit, got turned into Caruth, and Caruth is doing a good job at trying to make up for those positions as we pick back up that battle between the 2 and the 51 for 7th.
And to loop back to Caruth for a quick second, coming off a very successful Monday in league action as well, Caruth is somebody that likes to have fun racing, and that's one of the main keys when it comes to battles such as this that we're seeing. And when it comes to some of these drivers, because Caruth was among the drivers who was trying to stay loose by listening to music, Evan, to try and rock along with the race as he was leading and bobbing his head to the music as well. So he's somebody that likes to have fun in his machine. The same goes for all the other competitors here, where it's a great opportunity to have fun and build friendships from across the paddock as well as from across the globe from the other series.
Oh, and look at him hang that thing out as he gets up and onto the banking. That's what we talk about. There are some of those regional advantages. We've talked about how historically more important it's been and how critical it's been for a driver in the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series and in the NASCAR Peak of Mexico Series, right? To have some of the road racing experience. Here in the States, if you're looking to be a NASCAR Cup Series driver, you're likely coming from the short tracks, right? Starting off in Legends or Bandoleros, working yourself up, going to super late models and taking that more traditional ladder. But we've talked about a lot of the backgrounds of these drivers coming from karting and whatnot, Justin, and the great middle ground is the iRacing sim. And I think it's fun to see these drivers across different disciplines, across different nationalities and series competing, not just in this international series, a good opportunity for us to see them all on track together, but certainly fun to see those connections go beyond just these Wednesday races.
Absolutely. And in turn, it gets to where in some different aspects of iRacing, keep in mind, there are some who might see each other on the racetrack here on the sim and then see each other in the real world and say, hey, I didn't realize you were on iRacing before. That's the beauty of this platform. It allows drivers the opportunity to connect as well as to learn the tracks like we're seeing in the midst of these battles. But speaking of battles, Jake Cozio is not giving up on the back end of Calderon right now, wanting to apply a ton of pressure.
Yeah, I figured once that Tua Calderon was able to get on through that this might have been done. Of course, Calderon started 14th. He is the biggest mover in the field at a +7. Of course, Cozio had done a good job of maintaining his track position until the number 2 Chevrolet made the move on him. So you figure, all right, well, Calderon's moving. It'll be easy for him to run away. But maybe kudos to the 51 division Justin running in the tire tracks of that 2 up the road, maybe learning a little bit, trying to find some more speed out there on the racetrack. Of course, battling going on all over this virtual Daytona International Speedway. Left-hand side of your screen, the battle for 4th. Paul Jouffreau currently ahead of Simon Pilot, who continues his charge back through the field. They're also not that far behind 3rd either, as Calderon with a bit of a mistake on the right-hand side of your screen. Too much curb. Up that 51 to Cozio, unable to capitalize as Paul Jourdain wants to get in on the mix. The white car trailing the 51 on the right-hand side is lapped car Justin Campbell trying to navigate his way through as well.
Yeah, and some exciting battles in turn with these drivers really drifting out the rear tires, trying to keep the grip underneath them at this point. But it's going to be intriguing to see as well the difference in the tire fall as a result here. Keep an eye on Campbell with his ability to try and drive around on the fresher tires. The tough part is you don't want to be the factor, Evan, of the battle itself and cause someone to lose a position. So it's something you have to be aware of to pick your spot without costing the drivers around you the opportunity to pounce.
That first race at Brands Hatch, I think it was the chaos. That was the storyline. Mistakes, lapped cars and all. But this is what we saw at COTA. Groups of 4, groups of 5, and they're just going to be on top of each other all afternoon long. And it's going to be some great racing. Cozio again with an opportunity to throw a counter punch is further up the road. Paul Jouffreau closing in on a Gavillon in the number 3 position. There's a spinner ahead. It's lapped car Isabella Robusto. Always concerned, Justin, but there's a car around in front of the leaders, and it is the leader, given the issue that happened a little bit earlier on in this race with the 12 of Sanchez, but not your race leader. Everything's fine there. And just curious, for Frederic Gabillon in the number 3 spot, Justin, what he has to bounce back in this race, right? We talk about some of the vets that are racing in this, and Gabillon certainly falls into that category. He's got the most starts out of anybody in Euro NASCAR Pro history at 84. He's a 12-time race winner. He's finished runner-up at the championship 3 different times, running again in 2021, and putting on a great show this afternoon, maintaining 3rd for the moment. But as you ride on board with the Jouffreau, 64 wants to drop him down the ladder.
Yeah, it looks like Jouffreau just continuing to charge these corners, trying to get that position. And the interesting thing when it comes to Gavillon and his career, of course, is with him finishing 2nd 3 times in the point standings in his career, just that championship's the one thing that's eluded him. It's to where that can be frustrating as a driver, but it's still an incredible career from him, to say the very least, to compete in that series, to be well regarded as one of its top veterans in that respective series.
Truly the best of the best in competition for this one. Look at the 2 again as you ride on board with Jourdain there. It was Calderon with the mistake. That was down in turn number 5, the West Horseshoe. And give it to the number 8 machine. Jourdain started this race at 11th position. He now moves up to a race high P number 8, and that is Jake Cozio up the road, who has finally lost out in that exchange. We talked about Calderon and some of the other drivers, the 2-car slipping back now. Cozio able to take that spot back. A little bit too far back, I think, to get up to Andres Perez de Lara in the number 6 spot. But you can see, as we, this time by, Justin, take 1/3 of the way through. 10 laps down, 20 laps to go the next time by here from Daytona. Good stuff still through the mid-pack. Of course, you can see at the top of your screen, 1, 2, 3, no changes there in a while. Still, Lionel Pernia leading here from Daytona.
But guess who's coming in quickly? Roger Carruth. He's been dialing the bus stop very strong with the past few laps. He's been up to a 2nd quicker than some of his fellow competitors around him. He has been gaining a lot of time, and it also helps when they're getting Bargy in front.
A lot of curb at that time as well, and Raj is something who doesn't need any additional motivation, right? Pretty motivated enough as is, but he thought that he had a real good opportunity in this race to get a job done and maybe get a race win. And after that touch in turn 1, he has been driving much like Simon Pilot. Like a man on a mission. There's a look to the bottom. How about a sneaky 3-wide move through 1 and 2? He'll get 2 spots for the price of 1. What a drive, as he'll now take back the number 9 spot.
And I think Calderon got just a bit of tire spin in that mix to push Campbell out of the way. I don't think that's how he drew it up, but you take your chances where they come, right? And his opportunity to charge on through came very quickly. That's not a section you normally see 3-wide work.
Yeah, we'll take a second look at this one. Here's the onboard perspective. You can see the issue up the road with the 8 causes a little bit of hesitation between the 2 and the 18. Right there, they touch. He goes down to the inside. There is not enough room to get through there too wide, but he just gets through in time, maybe with a little bit of left side tires in the grass to make the pass. And you could move Carruth now, as I mentioned, up into the number 9 spot and within striking distance of Paul Jourdain to maybe continue to work his way up the ladder. There's a lot of curb by Paul Jouffreau, who got those turtles on the exit of the bus stop on the back straightaway, and that'll open up the door for Simon Pilot. He'll go to the outside at 175 miles an hour at a NASCAR 4. They'll go side by side into the NASCAR chicane, and the 66 will push his way through, running Jufro out of room, and Simon Pilot now back into a top 4 spot.
That was a touch bit naughty with a little bit of that send there, but you take advantage once again of the opportunities that come forward. And Jufro, when he went two-wheeling, mind you, out of that bus stop, the opportunity opened up very quickly. Now it's the matter of run away. As the pit stop window is opened up, it looks like a few drivers going for the undercut.
Nicosio and Jourdain both down pit road, working lap number 12 of 30 in this race, Justin. Clearly, I think the strategy and the similar lines what we've been talking about all series with the one-stopper, as we see more cars in now with Ruben Garcia, Alex de Alba also coming in.
Yeah, it's along those lines, but the interesting mark has been when the timing of the stop comes in, because the fall-off is upwards of nearly 3 seconds for some of the drivers, a couple of them up to 4 seconds, in fact. So it's just a matter of when do you take that stop? Do you risk putting yourself into a defensive mode, or do you try and split up the middle, or do you try and go for the overcut? The undercut can be very powerful at Daytona, keep in mind, Evan. We've seen that in eNASCAR, Coca-Cola iRacing Series competition in the past. We expected the same here coming in.
Let's watch a replay with the number 51 machine of Cozio. Pit exit, tricky here at Daytona. You're going to have to go on this limited access road and sneak along the fence. In the 51 machine, a little bit too aggressive, Justin. You can make up a ton of time if you can time that area successfully. He was too aggressive and is going to get away with a little bit of right side damage in that exchange. Back up to Simon Pilot, who rides in the number 4 spot. What do your race leaders do this time around? Do they decide to come down in pit? Parity at the front of the field says no. Through the NASCAR chicane, these cars up front still neglecting not to come down to the pit lane, and that's not a shock. You know, you talk about the decision on when to come down for the one stop has been the only little bit of strategy and question marks on the fuel numbers in this series thus far. Not at all surprised that it's those mid-pack drivers who want to mix it up. The guys up front have been pretty I think, strict on coming down to pit lane almost basically at the midway point in all these races, as Delara is going to come down from 7th, Calderon down in from the number 8 spot just behind him.
And the best example we've seen was at Coda, keep in mind, with Nick Sanchez on the dangers of going too early on an undercut. Because he gained a ton of time, yes, but he had to fight tooth and nail before to be able to properly get service, as some drivers slip and slide their way through the pit boxes right now and having trouble getting into said boxes.
Yeah, a little bit too deep down there in the box. I'm also noticing quite a variation in the speed of a lot of these stops. If you're going for 4 tires and fuel, which could be assumed is basically the strategy for everybody, unless you got some damage you want to get fixed up and whatnot, your pit stop time is going to be anywhere from the low to high 14 seconds. Some drivers up towards 15 and a half or so, Justin. But the pit lane total time, right? So time on and then off of pit road. For some drivers, like a Nick Sanchez, only 34 seconds, but other drivers struggling more. Somebody like a David Delara spent 41 seconds on pit road. So an extra 7 seconds in there could cost you a couple of positions on a green flag pit cycle.
And that's the main thing, too. It loops back to that situation with Cozio and the pit wall, where you're trying to push so hard on your entry in the lane itself, on your exit, where if you don't, you can lose a couple seconds in that section alone. And it costs you so much time as a result. It's so important to put in the preparation if you want to see to that section to be able to push on forward. As I believe we may have seen one driver just to the edge come in for stops.
It might have been Victor Morales who comes in from the number 5 position. So the 39 is in. That leaves about 5 cars without pit stops. Here's a replay with the 55. Way too hot into the corner. Look out. That was Isabella Robusto who went off and into the tires. Again, one of the driver diversity drivers. We talk about that a lot of they're racing with Rev Racing, and that program centers around short oval tracks here in the United States. Maybe one of her first times driving a NASCAR Xfinity Series car at a big track like this, like Daytona, on the iRacing surface. Picking up that number 14 Machida, Giorgio Maggi. He is always hanging that thing out in that NASCAR chicane. And also with him is David Dallara hanging the back end out. So two drivers from the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series working real hard, putting on a show in a battle for 12th and 13th.
And keep in mind, Laura already had to come in for repairs earlier in this race. So he's in a bit of a situation where he's on slightly fresher tires right now compared to some of these other drivers. But it's also the spot where he's likely going to have to come in again. So that's something Dallara is going to have to keep in mind, as right now just struggling on the corner exit to keep up with Maggi, who is really pushing and executing very well here and seeming like he's been doing a great job in this race.
Of course, Dallara, the challenger in this battle, trying to get up to that number 14 Maggi, and David won the Challenger Trophy back at his Whelen Euro Series debut season in 2020. But I think the best part about this is just when you see guys hanging out the back end like that. I mean, in a NASCAR stock car, a big, heavy thing like this that isn't really built to drive. It's built to drive right here, NASCAR 1 and 2, but not the rest of the road course, which is why it makes it so fun. It's a little bit faster to actually drive them slower and more in control. So what I can tell when they're hanging the back ends out like that, they're having fun. That's what matters in these exchanges. Right-hand side of your screen, another look at a replay. Issue up the road and then close it in. That was the exchange between those two. Look at all the counter steer put into that, Justin, as they're lighting up the rear tires. Is that the fastest way to do it? No, but I bet you they're having a heck of a time behind the wheel having fun.
It may work on the dance floor, but it's not something you want to do on the racetrack, obviously, because it lights up those rear tires and makes it even more looser for you for the next time you have that sort of situation, as some of the other leaders have finished their pit stop sequence.
And we're drivers in and out of the pit lane with the pilot and Jufro down it in. That leaves first, second, and maybe two more drivers down towards the bottom of the field as the only drivers who have yet to come down pit road for service. So Pernia and Frederic Gavillon in the number 2 spot, the drivers who we are going to wait on for this pit cycle to cycle through. Of course, the Argentine of Pernia has made a couple of exchanges and was very impressive, Justin, in his first race of this eNASCAR International Series last week. Finished runner-up to eventual race winner and fellow Argentine driver Agustin Canapino at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Of course, looking to improve on that with the checkered flag here tonight. He's opened up his advantage over Gavillon by about 6.8 seconds now. Total gap between first and second. Cross flags in the air this time and right on the money. Race leaders coming in.
Had to come in at that point, especially with the amount of lost time to Victor Morales Jr. at the moment. There's a chance that Morales Jr. actually jumps them in the pit lane. It's just a matter of how quickly these cars catch up with a couple laps difference. That's how big that fall off has been here at this racetrack.
You know, we'll see the drivers who stayed out. I don't really want to say stay out longer because this is kind of the normal pit cycle, but the drivers who have put those drivers in a position, Jake Cozio, right, who was one of the first drivers down pit road. He's going to cycle through the front straightaway. Watch where Pernia ends up. He's on the left-hand side. There's Cozio, but the 75 has to go slow along the fence, and that undercut will, for the moment, give Jake Cozio the advantage in this battle. Not guaranteed to last. And oh, he's going to throw it away. He makes a mistake down in the International Horseshoe. And just as soon as he got it, throws it away. Pernia, the 75, gets back on through.
That's Justin Campbell, who, keep in mind, is a lap down. That was still a scary moment either way for that to have happened right in front of you. Because imagine it this way. You're coming out of the pits at any racetrack and you immediately see a car sideways. Your first thought is, please don't hit me. And luckily for Pernia, able to avoid that and now focus on his marks. Has to close up a more than 4-second gap.
And Morales is now the lone driver still up the road. It is quite a significant margin, Justin, of 4.4 seconds between first and second on the racetrack. Morales has been rather quiet through all of this. After starting back in the 8th position, he came down pit road not way earlier than everybody else, pitted at the end of lap 13, crossing over to 15. So he gets about a 2-lap difference on the tires. And just how critical are those tires? Well, for Pernia, who was leading this race, best lap of the race for him was on lap 3. It was a 1-minute 57.616. You can't count his in-lap because he slowed down to pit, but his last lap before that was almost a 2-minute one. It was a 2:00.905. So you're looking at pretty substantial 3.5+ seconds of fall off per lap, and that's how the number 39 Morales was able to make that undercut work. Now, of course, he does have the older tires, but last lap did a pretty good job at holding his ground. Could the 39 steal the show now in the second half at Daytona?
Here's the tough part about that, though, is now it's the matter of the 2-lap older tires that will fare in for that respective battle, because it's going to lose you time in and out. It's going to lose you time in the bus stop chicane, as well as the final chicane. So all those sections are where those newer tires are going to come into play. Meanwhile, give credit to Raja Karuth for him being very daring and charging on some of these moves. It's been incredible to see his recoveries through the field.
He continues, both he and Simon Pilot, who were the drivers, the victims of that contact in that lap 1, turn 1 incident, have both been driving through the field. Pilot's got all the way back up to P3. Of course, Karuth was the big loser in all of that. He was the one that got spun off. But he has got a couple of drivers lined up if he could complete the pass here on Perez de Lara, looking as they make the run to turn number 6. Opts not to throw it in, sets him up, but he's going to go for the run up and onto the banking. Side by side they go in a battle for 8th and 9th position as Karuth wants it back. And look at the 22 all the way up to the outside wall, trying to wind it up for a run on the backstretch, but he will let Raja Karuth go. And now the 13 is back up into P8, highest running driver now of the NASCAR diversity class.
Just very well executed, to say the very least. And for Raja, has to be very dialed in and focused in terms of his mindset now after a lap 1 incident like that, because he's somebody that does not like to get into trouble, obviously, early on in a race such as this. He's usually someone, when he's having fun, you see him easygoing and loosey-goosey. Right now, I'm imagining he's very gripped up on the steering wheel and focused straight up on what's happening. Same for Perez de Lara, to try and make sure that that 22 doesn't hit the curbing too much to lose too much time, because there's a chance they get up to Jourdain for position, who is also on older tires.
And look at all the smoke up the road as driving it into the corner there was Karuth, trying to get up to Paul Jourdain, get 2 spots and 2 laps. Jourdain rides in the number 7 position as we go right now, and maybe feeling that pressure from Karuth. This seems to be overdriving it just a little bit, but he'll hang on for the time being through the horseshoe. Now this left-hand kink is turned 4. Can be tricky if you don't get off of the gas just enough. You can end up off it into the grass there on the right-hand side, and it could be messy down here into another hard braking zone. Very wide entry, late apex for the west horseshoe in turn number 5. And then not that much further up the road from these ones either is Jake Cosio, you can see, in P6. So all of this is within reach of the 13 as you continue to ride on board with the Space Station Gaming driver.
And the stars on that Space Station logo are definitely aligning to where you can tell they're looking towards those gaps. And right now, you can tell Raja is looking at those gaps as well that are opening up in some of these corners and saying, there's a chance I can send it in if I have enough confidence here. And right now, he's very confident on the brakes, too confident there.
Oh, and the H is going to go off and into the grass after they touch. Jourdain slides it and maintains his position. What a save by the 8 car of Paul Jourdain after Karuth looked to the outside, gave him a shunt, and somehow no positions change, and all those cars are still on track.
Incredible that they're still going, but you can tell Roger Carruth is really trying to late break his way in these corners right now to be able to gain some time. It's been impressive, but you also have to be careful with that because, well, when you're around other cars, Evan, that adjusts how you approach your braking marks too. And right now, it's going to be where if you send it too deep and too far, you have to be careful not to hit the car in front for obvious reasons.
Hey, we spent all this time, Justin, pre-race talking about how you're going to want to save the tires and make it to the end, and these guys are driving them like we got one lap to go, not 11 laps to go. Here's the perspective from Raja Carruth. Looked to the inside, went back up top, and I wonder if it was just over driving the corner a little bit on his own, but I mean, he sent Jourdain for a huge slide. They were fortunate to not get hit with slowdown penalties, and then Raja was fortunate to fight off a challenge by Perez de Lara, who hadn't fallen that far off and was looking to counterpunch. So Carruth gets to recover. He'll be there to chase down Jourdain for 7th. But we look back up to the battle for the race lead. Victor Morales is being chased down by Lionel Pernia. The difference now just 1.2 seconds between first and second. And don't count out Simon Pilot in the back end of some of these shots as well. He is only 3.2 seconds off in third.
And you can see the lap time comparison gaining about a second plus per lap with the leader already gaining time. And I talked about this earlier, right here, as well as in and out, which is turns 1 and 6, as well as that final bus stop are where he's going to gain the most time because there's more grip to be able to send it further into the corner. And in turn, you're able to make it stick better and gain some time in that section. And that's where that opportunity is going to light up like a Christmas tree here with those few lap pressure tires.
And lap traffic could be a factor as well. The red bumpered Ford Mustang up the road is race leader Victor Morales. Ahead of them is the last car on the lead lap, Joshua DeFecto. Haven't talked much about his number 77 Sweet Ride Chevrolet running in 17th spot. Could be a bit of a tricky situation depending on when this battle between Pernia and Morales kicks off. If they are on top of that 77 as he get in the way. Aside from that, they've got about a half a track of open space once they navigate this lap traffic. So best situation here for Morales, Justin, make a quick move, put that 77 in between you and Pernia, and then maybe hope that the 77 holds up the guy chasing you down, because that 75 has gotten the gap now to half a second. He is closing in for the race lead.
And not only that, there's a third challenger approaching, or a second challenger, I should say. I believe we just seen Pilot also approach. You see him just in the very backdrop right now. As communications underway to try and give some space here, this is not the spot you want to reach the traffic.
Oh, he gets through on the inside. It is going to be a tricky entry into the bus stop for Victor Morales. And off track goes Fecto. No issue. 1 and 2 get on through. And that is exactly what Victor Morales wanted, Justin. The gap goes from 0.5 to 1.24 seconds between first and second. So Pernia was a lot more cautious. He really didn't know what that lapped car was going to do. Took it a bit easier into the bus stop and threw away nearly an entire second. Now, is that the end of the world for Pernia? I don't think so. I think the 75 has the luxury of being that cautious in a situation like that, because he's clearly got the better of the two cars as we take a look at the replay with the 77 going into the grass.
And a bit of a scary moment, as in turn that holds up Simon Pilot, who had to make evasive action to be able to avoid the 77, takes him off the first line, and has to just avoid the rumble strips and those turtles to make sure he doesn't damage the race car either. So that's going to take at least about a couple laps to reel back in the time lost to be able to get back up to these two.
Should be the last bit of traffic, though. First, second, and third have to deal with for some time as they go to the second half of this infield portion of the racetrack to turns number 4 and now 5 is a little bit squirrely under braking there. Was that 75 machine apparently behind in second. The next closest car on track is already on the bus stop at the back straightaway. So now they have plenty of clean racetrack to work this one out. Last time by was 10 laps to go in this eNASCAR International iRacing Series finale for the virtual Daytona International Speedway Road Course. It clearly looks like, and again, remember, based on pit stops, of these three, Morales has got the older tires. His are 7 laps old. Pilot in third has 6-lap-old tires, and Pernia in second has 5-lap-old tires. So it clearly looks, Justin, to be a stage set for Leonel Pernia to avenge his runner-up finish last time out at COTA with a race win here tonight at Daytona, but it is far from decided.
Yeah, that's the key thing. It's going to take time, Evan, because there is an equalization point that they are approaching on these tires. And for Pernia, he's now started struggling a little bit the past couple laps, including with that traffic. So, in our words, you have to think you have 9 laps, many opportunities to get the job done. As long as you do what you were doing to catch up, you're in a good spot. If you overuse your tires is the tough thing, Evan, then you're in a bit of trouble, and that's when you put Pilot back into the equation too.
And he's going to go wide in turn 1, try to go for the undercut. He's looking to get some speed. Also, right-hand side of your screen, having a 3-way fight for 7th as Paul Jourdain, Raja Caruth, and Jake Cozio all battle for 6th, 7th, and 8th position. So that's on the right. The battle for the race lead is on the left-hand side, but a good couple of corners for Victor Morales Jr. as he tries to maintain his advantage. Morales made his NASCAR Peak Mexico Series debut in 2017, but we talk about that iRacing experience, Justin, the 2021 NASCAR Mexico Talsal iRacing Series champion is trying to hold off a hard-charging Pernia.
And all that experience definitely coming into play right now and right here. You can definitely tell he's nice and comfortable here at Daytona International Speedway. Keep in mind, Cozio with that pressure, doing a nice job handling it for the most part, but taking different lines at this point, just trying to use a little bit of a higher run to be able to get that launch off the corner. Not an area you expect to see that. He's trying to hold on as hard as he can right now in that battle on the right.
And doing everything he can, just wants to stay in this mix. And of course, is the driver under fire. Has had a lot of impressive runs in his own right, Jake Cozio, the 2018 NASCAR Mexico FedEx Challenge Rookie of the Year, the 2019 NASCAR Peak Mexico Series Rookie of the Year, and is trying to hold off somebody in Paul Jourdain behind, who is no slouch in his own right. Finished 4th in the Peak Mexico iRacing Series standings this past year with a trip to Victory Lane as well. Began racing karts way back at the age of 8, drives for Freightliner in Super Copa. So fun to see all those different forms of racing into the mix. And of course, we've talked about Raja Caruth in the 13 machine, who is the 3rd member of that 3-way battle for P6 on the right-hand side of your screen, Justin. But that last lap, for the first time in a long time, Victor Morales Jr. was faster than Leonel Pernia in second, and that could be big in terms of fighting for the race win tonight.
It's going to be very big to be able to keep that up, and that's going to be the tough part for the next few laps. To be able to do that, as you're in a bit of trouble for Ruben Garcia Jr. He was among the drivers who are now in the pit lane noticed, and this is going to be why, and this is not what you want to see have happen.
Oh. Yeah, he might have gotten away with it, but then you saw that left rear quarter panel slap the pit wall, and that is what heavily damaged Ruben. Of course, I like to refer to him as our crossover driver in this because he's representing the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series as a 3-time series champion, but he's also an alum of the NASCAR Drive for Diversity program. So tough break for him as a mistake comes up the road from Cozio in the battle for position number 6. That was down, and in turn number 5, the West Horseshoe locked it up on his own, and that mistake will cost the 51 2 spots.
And that time just a little bit too deeper compared to the last time he tried to swing through the horseshoes. Just ends up costing him all that time, but opens up the bottle for drivers like Raja Caruth and Paul Jourdain to be able to now fight for positions. The matter of can Cozio keep up is the big question. After all, those drivers seem to be fairly close on pace before that mistake to the 51.
Yeah, they'll see if the 51 can stick with, where they stick it behind because they were slow, or that he was slower than they were, and he was kind of holding them up a little bit. Or if they are that evenly matched, I think he has a realistic opportunity to get back into this battle. Back towards the front of the field, last lap for Morales, 159.2. It was 159.1 for Lionel Pernia. So just because Morales has turned up the wick just a little bit does not mean this race is done, Justin. But I think he was saving maybe just a little bit, maybe allowing that 75, to get convinced that, hey, I'm quicker than this guy. I'm going to chase him down, get the job done, burn up some of his equipment just a little bit. They look very evenly matched in the battle for first and second position right now. And I talked earlier about, as we see that battle now carry on behind with Jourdain and Carruth. That's where Raja made a double pass earlier in the race, but he can't do it. I talked earlier about how Simon Pilot had the best average finish out of all the drivers who had raced in both races thus far, as Jourdain now makes a mistake of his own. And that one's in the International Horseshoe, and Kozio wants to challenge, but he'll be on the wrong side for that left-hand turn for Kink, and he'll tuck in line. But Victor Morales Jr., no slouch either, Justin. A fifth at Brands Hatch, third at Coda, the second best average finish out of all drivers in this series this year, and is showing why up front, looking to become the third different race winner in 3 weeks.
That just shows the talent for one, but the incredible race we've had today, to say the very least, because remember, we had so many lead changes early on, 20 drivers making mistakes from the race lead. It's been that type of a race today where it's been difficult to keep your car on the racetrack, and we've seen that come into play in the mid-pack as well. Now, it's the matter of, can you handle the worn-out tires? Did you overcook your tires by trying to get yourself to where you are? As well as some of these strategies starting to really overlap and come into play for a couple of these competitors, including that lead, which is still very buttoned up tight.
This is the closest the 75 has been in some time. Looking underneath with the tires in the grass, and that will cost Lionel Pernia a little bit of time as Victor Morales opens things up just a little bit. Keep it in mind as well, look behind that kind of aquamarine number 75 of Pernia. That's see him right there in third. There he is. That's Simon Pilot, your race winner from the opener at Brands Hatch. Your pole sitter in this race, Justin, for all intents and purposes, looked like was going to cruise to another win. He was best in practice, qualified on pole, but a bad start in the contact in turn one put him on the back foot. If these top two really start fighting with each other, that is going to open up the door for that 66 Pilot to join the party. He's only about 2.6 seconds behind in third as that 75 stays within a car length.
And I'm just imagining Simon Pilot, as soon as he gets within range, saying, "Hello, I'm here." Give a little bit of a wave or something along those lines, because he has been very good when it comes to his pace all day ever since that issue at the start. It's been a drive and a half to get himself back up here. It's the matter of, can he get the fight he needs to be able to make forward progress? There's a bit of a mistake in front of him. Morales with a mistake.
Look out, the race leader. No, Victor Morales, I should say, lapped car almost gets into the race leader there. He almost ended up on the curb, swung it all the way to the right, and just about cleaned out with that 75. So Victor Morales, second time tonight that the race leader, Justin, is going to make an unforced error. Watch it again on the right. He goes into the bus stop right there, misses it, and it ruins the setup for the back half. He can't get it wound up in time. He has to give up so much speed to not get those curbs that he hands the race lead back to Lionel Pernia. Saw it earlier in this race with Nick Sanchez, and now Victor Morales bobbles from the top spot.
Unbelievable is the main reaction from that. That is unreal to have that happen coming to 5 laps to go when you're in a nice solid rhythm and you make your biggest mistake of the day at that moment. That's now allowed Simon Pilot right into the conversation. Now it's the matter of, can you get back to Pernia with older tires? That's going to be extremely difficult to try and overcome now, Evan, as a result of that mistake. And you can tell with how hard he's charging, he wants that position back.
We'll get another perspective of this one on the right-hand side. The only good thing I noticed, Justin, about this is I don't see any smoke which means that he never locked up the tires completely, which means that they shouldn't be overheated. If you saw smoke, if he did a 4-tire lock, you could kiss his opportunity at fighting back away. Is it an uphill climb? Yes. Pernia has pulled now a 1-second advantage, and it is growing as he had a great exit through turn 6. So it's an uphill battle for Morales, but he was calm in that moment. Didn't lock up the tires, didn't wreck the race car, and he's at least still in contention with 4 laps to go the next time by. But man, what a feeling after he had done such a good job for so many laps to hold off Pernia to finally make that one mistake just into the race coming late in this one.
And look at this going on when it comes to this fight. Paul Jourdain and Jake Cozio both slipping and sliding like they're on a water slide coming off onto turn 6 of the NASCAR 1 and 2. These drivers letting it all hang out for position right now with how they're fighting.
They are working hard. Paul Jourdain has been in every battle, it feels like, we've looked at this evening. Cozio, of course, trying to make up for some of the own challenges that he's had in this race. Carruth was able to beat both of them. He has set sail. He is up the road in P6. So this is the battle for 7th and 8th position. They're far enough ahead of Andres Perez de Lara that I don't think the 22 is going to be a factor. These guys have an opportunity to fight it out amongst themselves. This time by 4 laps to go from the world center of racing.
And I think this is one of those scraps that can last all the way to the checkered flag of this race. Roger Carruth continuing to pull away as a result of these two fighting. It's just a matter now of, can Cozio get the grip together to be able to get side by side? That's the tough part. They're near identical with their lap times. The tough part is Jourdain has been losing time a little bit by bit. The last time, 2 seconds lost with some of his mistakes.
And if you give that 51 an opportunity, we have seen a lot of contact this evening. Not that it may necessarily be on purpose, but these drivers have been physical all afternoon long. And I just would not trust leaving a door open for a guy looking to dive bomb me late in this race. Of course, the 8 machine would love to get up and fight with the 13, but another mistake there. Too wide through the West Horseshoe, and now Cozio, he's not knocking on the door, Justin, pounding on the door, trying to get there in the fight for 7th.
Pound, 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 to say the very least, on that door. It's a large thumping right now that's coming from Jake Cozio. But right now, Paul Jourdain's doing a great job handling the pressure coming from behind with those large knocks on the door coming from behind. It's just a matter of, can he make it without any mistakes? That's been the tough part all day long throughout this race, especially here when you get pressure from behind, but the difference is in the braking zones. This time, handle the corner well.
And you're not missing anything in the battle for the race lead. Leodel Pernia's advantage stable at 2 seconds. The battle for P2 could be fun. That's top left-hand corner of your screen. Victor Morales, after that mistake, is now under fire by Simon Pilot. Look at the bottom left, though. Big slide, and what a move, as it's the 22 of de Lara trying to hang on ahead of Abraham Calderon. That one's for 9th and 10th. The three-way battle for 7th, still on the right-hand side of your screen. All of this now looking to 3 laps to go.
And Roger Carruth has been reeled in despite the older tires. Look at this, though. Cozio had an opportunity to force side-by-side, and a major send by Perez de Lara in the inside left. Locked up the tires and opened up the door for the 2.
Side-by-side everywhere. Calderon makes the pass for 9th position. Cozio on the right-hand side of your screen makes the pass out of Paul Jourdain for 7th. 2 passes at the same time, side-by-side, inside of 3 laps to go here from Daytona. I wonder if Pilot could make that challenge for 2nd. Look at us, not done in that battle for 9th. Fighting back now is the 22 of Andres Perez de Lara. Thought that it was done, but he drives right back up on a Calderon. It won't happen in turn 3, but keeping him honest now is even another battle ongoing. That exchange for 9th position, right-hand side of your screen now.
And I don't think that fight is done either, because Perez de Lara has been having the best race of this series, in my opinion, from that 22. After the struggles at Coda, there's some struggles in the early portions of the season, has vastly improved for today. And it's been impressive to see that 22 up towards the front and some of these sends that 22 has been able to make stick. That time, though, way too much send, knocking the cones with them.
He's going to clean him out, just overdrove the race car, and that's what you're going to have late in these races. You're going to go for broke, and he cut that corner a little bit shy, hits the cones. I think he's fortunate to avoid a slowdown penalty. That's likely what they represent, is that you can't just cut short that part of the racetrack as you blend it back up and onto the banking. No penalty. He stays in this exchange, but I think finally Calderon pulling away. That number 2 machine now trying to stretch it. His advantage is now about a second in this exchange. With for the cars up front, though, Justin, already inside of 2 laps to go in this race. Not counting out the fact that there could be some more late race mistakes. It's been the storyline of this race. Leonel Pernia, of course, back to the front ahead of this duo between Morales and Pilot. What 4 or 5 different race leaders that we've seen. We've seen 2 different race leaders make self-inflicted errors that have cost them the race lead. I mean, we've had just about everything in these events thus far, and who's to say that we're in the clear yet?
Yeah, this is still the type of race where anything can happen, as we've seen all night long and all day long at this track. With Rick DeBras Jr., lots of traffic, nearly overrunning the traffic there. That's a bit of a sketchy moment as a driver once again to reach that traffic there, and that opens up the door for this battle possibly for the final lap.
Traffic helped him earlier in this race when it actually slowed up Pernia in the same spot on track. That time, it basically shuts down his last hope of going to the race lead, because the difference is now 3 seconds up to Leonel Pernia, who started this race in 3rd, was a little bit quiet, but kept pounding the pavement. He has 1 lap to go here from Daytona, looking for his first eNASCAR win.
Just has to make sure no mistakes. That's the critical thing, because right now Pernia has been very stable and very consistent on his times the past few laps, keeping within the 2-second mark. Now it's just a matter of just hoping that traffic, if it pops up, is friendly with you, and just don't make any major sudden movements in that car.
Looking at the battle for 2nd and 3rd as well. As that continues on, is there some late race magic for Simon Pilot after he was so dominant early in this race? It's the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series drivers 1-2, but Simon Pilot carrying the torch for the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series wants 1 more spot.
And these 2 series have been scrapping all series long very aggressively, and Victor Morales Jr. looking like he didn't get the best of runs back on the NASCAR 1, but still Pilot slipping and sliding right now with those rear tires is what's hurting him for this fight.
And it's hard when you get back up and onto the bank and you talk about slipping and sliding. 98 degrees Fahrenheit track temp working against these drivers. Oldest tires they've been on all night long, fighting against them as well. The battle for 6th position will rage on as Raja Caruth under fire late. Jake Cozio trying to get a late pass to get back and into this conversation. But how about the 75 on the Daytona High Banks for 1 final time? He was runner-up at COTA. He'll be the top step of the podium this time for the Argentine of Leonel Pernia. Final time through turn number 14, and he wins the finale of the eNASCAR International Series, winner at the World Center of Racing.
A very impressive win, very consistent on his marks, as Roger Caruth has one of the best recovery drives along with Simon Pilot all day. Both of those drivers recovering to be -2 as long as they hold on and keep themselves clean to the checkered.
Yeah, Morales held off Pilot. More funning. Caruth into the final bus stop. The 13 machine will hang on to P6. Cozio gives him a shot. That one ends without fireworks. Now Jaden Raina trying to hold off Andres Perez de Lara. That was a late pass by Raina that happened through the infield portion at a turn 5. And the 22 is slow. De Lara might be out of gas. So Raina will hang on. That one will be a P11.
And I'm surprised the 22 may have ran out of gas here. That's an incredible development, to say the very least. To be able to stretch it that far is first an amazing thing, but second, it's amazing that you have to worry about that. The fuel mileage is expected to go a little bit further for some of these competitors today.
Yeah, that's going to be 17 and a half laps as Delara runs out, but other drivers went 18 and a half. So curious if it was a limited fuel stop to save time on pit road, or if it was just more fuel consumption. But how about Lionel Pernia here, Justin? The number 75 machine to mention didn't compete in that opener at Brands Hatch, finished second to fellow Argentine driver Agustin Canapito last week at Circuit of the Americas. But a great drive this evening. Had a fast car, but nothing stood out that said the 75 was going to put it on him like this. Second best in practice, third best in qualifying. But when it came down to the race pace, the 75 machine was perfect. And at the end of the day, it's not about hot laps. It's who can do it for an hour-long race, and that was Pernia tonight.
Indeed, but here's what happened to Bruce Laura. Listen in.
And that's it. Run it out. And onto the high banks of all places, just probably the worst place, because that's a slow crawl back to the front straightaway. Slow roll here for Lionel Pernia is the best, because it is just a celebratory one. He's done burnouts in one. He did a couple of burnouts over in turn number 7, so no fuel issues for the driver of the 75 machine. Lionel Pernia is just finding every place to celebrate here, and to win at Daytona, yeah, it's the sim, but I think it's such a special place for any driver. To get a race win. The 45-year-old at a Buenos Aires, 2010 made his debut with the World Touring Car Championship, and of course representing the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series here this afternoon. Let's take a look at your eNASCAR full race results. The final margin of victory, 3.1 seconds between Pernia and Morales for first and second. Simon Pilot also comes home with a podium finish here this afternoon. Just ahead of Paul Jouffreau and Frederic Gavillon, who comes home at 5th position, Raja Caruth, Jake Cozio, Paul Jourdain, Abraham Calderon, and Jaden Raina, your top 10.
In 11th position, de Lara finishes in that spot in front of Perez de Lara, who ran out of gas, surprisingly, on the final lap. Giorgio Maggi finished in 13th, Alex de Alba with a very quiet run in 14th, Joshua Infecto in 15th. Justin Campbell, 16th position, 1 lap down. Bel Robusto, 5 laps down, 17th. And the drivers who had major troubles in this race, Ruben Garcia finishes 18th. 19th goes to Nicolas Sanchez after having trouble early on in the race from the race lead. LeVar Scott rounds out the top 20, and Regina Servant rounds out the entrance today.
So look top to bottom at your eNASCAR full race results. Justin, we'll go back down to pit lane with you to stand by with our third place finisher this afternoon. It is Simon Pilot in the 66.
And first things first, how are you feeling about your run? Able to recover from the first lap troubles to a podium finish in the mix for the race win?
Yeah, that was not an easy start. I missed the green flag, so I think a couple of passed me, and then I was touched on the rear. And unfortunately, I hit I think it was Raja, and then it was just about making taking over and over again the guys in front of me. I saw Victor going into the pit lane a bit early, trying to make the I suppose the I don't know how you call it now. And then I went a lap later, and then I tried to push really hard to close the gap, but unfortunately when I got close, my tires started getting tired, and I just was hoping that Victor was second place, so I would keep the championship lead.
Now, seeing that you're along with your rig here, what is your setup like for sim racing for that number 66?
So thanks to Trustmaster, I have a TSXW for the wheel. I also have a TH8A for the gear shift, and the TCLM pedals. And the seat is just a regular seat.
Overall, how much fun was this series in your opinion?
It was a lot of fun because it's great to race with people from all over the world, especially NASCAR drivers that are kind of like brothers from series to series. So it was really nice because we each, I think, have a different style of driving. I think obviously for your NASCAR, the Brands Hatch one was the best. But as we could see for Coda, it was obviously for the Mexican drivers that were dominant in that race. So it was really nice to see the difference between each driver in each country.
Absolutely a fun series. Congratulations on the run today.
Thank you, guys. That was
Back,
fun.
absolutely was. Back to you, Evan.
Well, and a big thanks to Simon for sticking around and chatting with us post race in this one. Of course, he got that race win to kick things off back at Brands Hatch, Justin, and that rounds out a short 3-race debut for this eNASCAR International iRacing Series. I know there's no trophy to go out, but I think of the drivers who competed in all of them, Simon Pilot was the most consistent. And of the series, who wants the bragging rights, right? You heard it right there from him. The NASCAR Peak Mexico Series drivers win both the second and third rounds. But we saw a lot of good stuff tonight. I think it was really cool to see the drivers from the Peak Mexico Series, from the Wheel and Euro Series, the Pinty Series in Canada, of course, the NASCAR Drive for Diversity class, all on track at the same time. What we've touched on a couple of points over the course of the year, Justin, is, of course, last year when real life racing halted. Of course, everybody knows the Pro Invitational Series right here stateside with the Cup Series drivers and whatnot. But these international NASCAR series really embraced this as well, right? The Euro Series incorporated in. We've referenced several times that the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series had an iRacing championship last year and this year as well. And I think that experience on the sim showed. And when other time you get to see drivers literally under the NASCAR banner from all across the world, though, racing on track at the same time.
It was incredible to see some of the action, to say the very least, and see how some of these drivers in turn responded on a road course. And we've seen some of the drivers really show their prowess and some of the preparation, but also some very impressive drives and strategy calls throughout this entire series and some great racing to boot. It was an exciting time, to say the very least, Evan, from start to finish, to see all this action on tracks where some of these competitors may not have gone to or thought about going to in the real world or the sim prior to the series.
Yeah, fun opportunity for them to just go to some different tracks on the surface as well. 3 weeks, 3 different winners. What's not to love? Of course, if you want to see more eNASCAR action, we encourage you to tune in with us next Tuesday night, July the 12th, for the virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway for the next round of the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. You can catch that one at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, countdown to green starting at 8:30, so you're not going to want to miss that one. Of course, use this as an opportunity one final time to encourage all of you to go like and follow and support the drivers of the eNASCAR series, of course, though, our international series as well. So go watch some NASCAR Peak of Mexico Series races. Go stream some NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series races, the Pinty Series. Support the Drive for Diversity drivers. They put on the show for us. But that'll do it for us here tonight from Daytona. So on behalf of our entire team at iRacing, for Justin Prince and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in. Congratulations tonight go to Leonel Pernia, your winner from the Daytona Road Course. This has been the eNASCAR International iRacing Series. For more information, log on to iRacing.com and eNASCAR.com. We'll see you next time on iRacing.